The Committee on Science, Space, and Technology will come to order. Without objection, the Chair is authorized to declare recesses of the committee at any time. Pursuant to Committee Rule 2F and House Rule 11-2H4, roll call votes may be postponed. Today we meet to consider H.R. 4412, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration Authorization Act of 2014. I'll recognize myself and the ranking member for opening statements. Let me thank the members who are here, and we expect more momentarily, to be here for today's markup of H.R. 4412, the NASA Authorization Act of 2014. There is a reason why the National Air and Space Museum is the most visited museum in America. Space exploration captures the imagination of people around the world and encourages future generations to dream big, work hard, and shoot for the stars. NASA has accomplished some of the most awe-inspiring and technologically advanced space initiatives in the history of humankind. Throughout its history, our space program has set goals that required vision and offered challenges that have led to innovation and the development of new technologies. New technologies give us new discoveries about the universe and hope that we can find solutions to problems here on Earth. Space exploration is an investment in our nation's future, often the distant future. And many technologies that Americans use on a daily basis were born out of NASA research. These include heart rate monitors, athletic shoes, air and water purifiers, cordless tools, and laptop computers. They improve Americans' quality of life and save lives. Today's bill ensures that NASA will continue to innovate and inspire. The scientists, engineers, and astronauts who find creative and new solutions to the challenges of exploring the universe serve as role models for our students. They motivate young people to study science, math, engineering, and computer science. Even if not all of these students become astronauts, the skills and knowledge they learn can be applied to make technological breakthroughs in other fields. These accomplishments stimulate our economy and keep the United States globally competitive. There is strong bipartisan support for NASA's unique role, and the manager's amendment offered today reflects this. Mr. Palazzo and Ms. Edwards deserve much credit for producing a bipartisan bill. The manager's amendment increases the use of the International Space Station for science research, encourages commercial use of space, protects us from the effects of solar flares, helps remove orbital debris, and supports the development of a new space telescope that will detect Earth-sized planets. The American people largely support space exploration and NASA. This support is reflected in Congress as well, on both sides of the Capitol and on both sides of the aisle. Lastly, we are at this point thanks to the persistence over many days of our very able staff members. On the Republican side, they include Tom Hammond, Allison Rose Sennison, Jared Stout, and Gabriela Raman. And on the Democratic side, Pam Whitney and Alan Lee. This was obviously a team effort and is very much appreciated by members of the committee. I encourage members to vote for the manager's amendment when we get to it and to support the final bill. And then it's on to the House floor. That concludes my opening statement, and I'll recognize the ranking member, Ms. Johnson, the gentlewoman from Texas, for hers.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I will try to be relatively brief in my opening remarks so that we can quickly move to the consideration of the manager's amendment, at which time I will have a few additional comments. I've made no secret of the fact that I consider NASA to be a key element of our nation's research and development enterprise. NASA drives technological innovation and scientific advancement. It is also a very positive symbol throughout the world of American ingenuity and our can-do spirit. Finally, NASA has been a long source of inspiration for our young people, firing them up to pursue the STEM disciplines that will be critical to our future competitiveness. That is why I consider reauthorizing NASA to be one of our committee's most significant legislative responsibilities. And that is why I am pleased that after some initial missteps, this committee is addressing that responsibility with a good bipartisan bill, something that has been long a hallmark of this committee. The bill before us, with its accompanying manager's amendment, has many good features, and I will not attempt to discuss all of them. Instead, I would just note several key elements of the bill and the manager's amendment. First, It makes clear that NASA is and should remain a multi-mission agency with a balanced portfolio of programs in space and earth science, aeronautics, and human space flight and exploration. It provides a challenging goal for the nation's human exploration program and supports the development of the SLS and Orion vehicles needed to carry out that program. H.R. 4412 and its manager's amendment contain provisions that will help promote productive Earth and space science, fundamental space life and physical sciences, International Space Station research, aeronautics research, and space technology and development. There are also provisions to help strengthen NASA's education and public outreach activities. Finally, there are a number of good government provisions to ensure that the taxpayer dollars invested in NASA are used effectively. Mr. Chairman, this bill and the manager's amendment are by no means perfect. For example, I remain disappointed that it was not possible to provide funding guidance to NASA for fiscal year 2015 and beyond. But because I think that authorizes we need to provide the funding required to carry out the important task we have given the agency. However, I do believe that the bill as amended by the manager's amendment is a good bill and it is worth support. Excuse me. Before I close, I'd like to express my appreciation to Ms. Edwards, our staff, for working with me to ensure that we would have a good bill coming out of today's markup. And I'd like to thank you, Chairman Smith, and Space Subcommittee Chairman Palacio and their staff for their willingness to work cooperatively with us so that we can attain the positive outcome that I anticipate in today's markup. And with that, I urge support for 4412 as amended by the manager's amendment, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson, and let me thank you for your comments as well as for your essential role in getting us to the point we are now with a bipartisan NASA bill. Pursuant to notice, I now call up H.R. 4412, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration Authorization Act of 2014, which was introduced by Representative Palazzo and amended by the Subcommittee on Space, and the clerk will report the bill.
H.R. 4412, as amended by the Subcommittee on Space on April 9th, 2000.
Without objection, the bill will be considered as read, and the gentleman from Mississippi, the chairman of the Space Subcommittee, is recognized for his statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The bill before us today is the result of weeks of negotiations between the minority and majority. Certainly, this legislation is not perfect, but it is a good faith effort on both sides to commit to a bipartisan deal. As was said at the subcommittee markup 3 weeks ago, the ranking member and I anticipated there would be additional changes to the bill moving forward. Over these last few weeks, we have continued to work with our friends on the other side of the aisle to come to an agreement on several outstanding items. The manager's amendment being offered today encompasses nearly all of those items. As the bill is written, it sets NASA on a path to landing humans on Mars with the creation of a human exploration roadmap. This roadmap is critical to the future of human exploration for the United States and ensures there is a plan and structure in place that will span several administrations and elections. It is a fiscally responsible and technically feasible blueprint. Both the Space Launch System and Orion Crew Capsule are reaffirmed in the bill, consistent with the NASA Authorization Act of 2010, which laid out very clear guidelines and direction for the development of these systems. This bill authorizes ample funding for the Commercial Crew Program to ensure safe and on-time development of domestic access to the International Space Station. There are also oversight provisions to ensure transparency in the contracts and processes used to develop these systems. This agreement represents an understanding that both our commercial crew partners and those developing SLS and Orion have a crucial role to play in ending our reliance on Russian rockets. The science title of the bill emphasizes the importance of completing and launching the James Webb Space Telescope in 2018, which will build on the work of its Hubble predecessor while expanding our view into the universe. The bill reaffirms Congress's commitment to the first A in NASA, the Aeronautics Research Mission Directorate. The agency has a proud history of infusing critical fundamental new knowledge and technologies into the aerospace sector, and H.R. 4412 directs NASA to create research and development roadmaps for the agency's work on unmanned aerial systems, hypersonics, supersonics, and rotorcraft. In an ongoing effort to keep NASA's limited budgets focused to support the agency's primary missions, the bill directs that any transfer of additional responsibilities to NASA should be accompanied by additional resources. NASA is the only agency tasked with space exploration, and its budgets must reflect space exploration as a priority. Yet the President's budget request again transfers responsibility for developing instruments for climate research from NOAA to NASA without providing additional resources to NASA to pay for such responsibilities. Finally, this committee has made multiple requests for more information on a proposed asteroid redirect mission, or ARM. These are reasonable requests, especially in light of the considerable concerns that have been expressed in the scientific community and by NASA's own advisory groups. To date, NASA has failed to provide a budget profile, program office, or schedule. This bill directs NASA to provide these key details about this mission. I want to again thank Ms. Edwards, her staff, and of course the Majority and Minority Committee staff for their tireless efforts to pull this bill together. I'm proud that at the end of the day we're able to put our names on a bipartisan bill. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Palazzo. The gentlewoman from Maryland, Ms. Edwards, the ranking member of the Space Subcommittee, is recognized for her statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I am really pleased to be able to join my colleague, Mr. Palazzo, in introducing our manager's amendment today. It was jointly agreed to by Mr. Palazzo, Chairman Smith, and Ranking Member Johnson and myself, along with our committee. It's an amendment that enhances substantially the subcommittee passed bill. Mr. Chairman, as I indicated previously, due to time constraints, the subcommittee passed bill didn't reflect all of the good work that both sides had been doing to reach common ground. In fact, we knew we had work to do. Subsequent to the subcommittee markup, our staffs have continued to work diligently on a number of areas, and today's markup is proof of that hard work. In fact, it's proof of teamwork. Provisions in the manager's amendment include direction to NASA that it continue carrying out a balanced Earth science program that includes Earth science research, Earth systematic missions, competitive venture class missions, other missions and data analyses, mission operations, technology development, and applied sciences, consistent with the recommendations and priorities established in the National Academy's Earth Science Decadal Survey. Having NASA continue its education and outreach efforts to increase student interest and participation in STEM education, improve public literacy in STEM, provide curriculum support materials, and create support opportunities for professional development for STEM teachers. NASA is among the best in STEM education and outreach, and the provisions of the manager's amendment underscore that point. The National Academies are engaged to provide a comprehensive study that reviews current and planned ground-based and space-based space weather monitoring requirements and capabilities, identifies gaps, and identifies options for a robust and resilient capability. A NASA plan on its potential use of operational commercial reusable suborbital flight vehicles for carrying out scientific and engineering investigations and educational activities, and the development of a strategic plan for carrying out competitive, peer-reviewed, fundamental space, life science, and physical sciences and related technology research, among other activities, again, consistent with the priorities in the National Academy's Decadal Survey. And a report describing NASA's activities, tools, and techniques associated with the goal of servicing satellites using robotic spacecraft. NASA soliciting and reviewing in collaboration with other relevant federal agencies concepts and technological options for removing orbital debris from low Earth orbit. As you can see, the areas addressed in the manager's amendment are far-reaching and are reflective of hard work by staff on both sides of the aisle. Today, we should be proud to have reached common ground for the full committee markup. We are light years from where we began in 2013. Mr. Chairman, I'm really appreciative of the spirit of cooperation and can-do attitude that members and staff on both sides have exhibited throughout the drafting process, often giving up our own individual pet projects or ideas for the whole. And I'm grateful to you, to Ranking Member Johnson and Chairman Palazzo, for your unwavering commitment to bring this bipartisan legislation to a close. I echo the Chairman's thanks to our respective staff on the majority and the minority, Chris Schenck, Tom Hammond, Jared Stout, Allison Rose Sonneson, Gabriella Ranan, and to the personal staff of Mr. Palazzo, Megan Mitchell. And from our team on the minority, Dick Oberman, Pam Whitney, Alan Lee, and my personal staff, Ann Nelson. And let me say also to all of our members, I think each one of us on both sides of the aisle will have something to hang our hats on in support of this NASA authorization, and I thank you for the opportunity to work on it.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Edwards. If there's no further discussion on the bill, we will now go to amendments on the bill, and the bill is open for that purpose. And the first amendment on the roster is an amendment offered by Ms. Edwards and Mr. Palazzo, and the clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment to H.R. 4412, offered by Ms. Edwards of Maryland and Mr. Palazzo of Mississippi, amendment number 002. Page 14, line 2, strike is to enable.
Without objection, the amendment will be considered as read, and the gentlewoman from Maryland, Ms. Edwards, is recognized first to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you could hear from my statement, there are many things that we can point to in the amendment that really clear up some of the issues that we were working on from the subcommittee markup. We were able to incorporate, you can see in the manager's amendment, some ideas that actually had come and been approved earlier by both Republican members and Democrats, and we incorporated those into the manager's amendment. And so with that, I would conclude my statement because I think it's time to move forward with the markup.
Thank you, Ms. Edwards. The gentleman from Mississippi, Mr. Palazzo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to echo the words of Ms. Edwards, the ranking member of the Space Subcommittee. This truly is a bipartisan agreement. We can all be proud of the great work of the subcommittee and full committee has done to be inclusive of members on both sides of the aisle. The manager's amendment before us today includes those outstanding items that were unresolved prior to the subcommittee markup 3 weeks ago. Since that time, Chairman Smith and I have been working with the ranking members to come to an agreement on what additional provisions could be compiled into the manager's amendment. In compiling this amendment, we were very careful to ensure that the spirit of the bipartisan subcommittee bill was not compromised. The various provisions contained in the manager's amendment were meticulously discussed before they were included in our agreement. The manager's amendment continues to build on the subcommittee's work to provide for a human exploration roadmap. NASA has put forth several items proposed as a roadmap. In fact, I believe NASA is holding an open forum today describing NASA's human exploration path to Mars. Unfortunately, many questions remain unanswered regarding NASA's way forward for deep space exploration. As of today, NASA has not provided the specific set of capabilities and technologies required to support a manned mission to Mars, nor have they identified the mission sets necessary to demonstrate the proficiency of these capabilities. Congress is still waiting to hear how NASA would stage intermediate destinations, Mars mission risk areas, and potential risk mitigation approaches. Additionally, NASA has not described the process for evolving the fully integrated Orion crew capsule with the Space Launch System. And finally, there is currently no framework for international cooperation or the potential risk posed by relying on international partners for items on the critical path of development. In short, for all of NASA's rhetoric about a roadmap, to date we've seen very little substance to back it up. This amendment includes important language on the development of next-generation liquid rocket engines. This provision will ensure that any next-generation liquid rocket engine developed for national security purposes takes into consideration the objectives of the civil space program as much as possible. The United States already has a diverse portfolio of engines that reduce risk and ensures access to space. This language will provide for greater coordination on any new development so that it will meet both national security and civil space needs. While the base bill includes a section on relief from new onerous termination liability requirements, this amendment includes a provision to ensure timely notification to Congress should the administration plan to cancel a program covered by the bill. The relief from termination liability costs will allow hundreds of millions of dollars to be freed up from bureaucracy and applied directly to program development work. Orbital debris continues to pose serious risk to the operational space capabilities of the United States. In the NASA Authorization Act of 2010, Congress directed the administration to coordinate with countries within the Interagency Space Debris Coordination Committee to mitigate the effects and growth of orbital debris. However, the status of this coordination is unknown. The manager's amendment requires NASA to produce a report on these coordination efforts and a strategy to mitigate orbital debris. The road to this agreement was not easy. and we still have work to do before a final product is done with the Senate. We are well on our way. There are most certainly things from both sides that did not make it into this amendment. I know that I would have preferred a little bit more direction in the exploration sections and more oversight of the progress of SLS Orion development to make sure the administration is on track. And with that, I would like to once again, for the third time, thank Chairman Smith, Ms. Edwards, and Ms. Johnson for their efforts in pulling together this agreement, as well as all of our staff who labored over this bill. Megan Mitchell, who has faithfully advised me throughout the process. Rebecca Rounds, legal extern on space. The subcommittee staff, Tom Hammond, Jared Stout, Allison Rose Sonneson, Ann Nelson on Ms. Edwards' staff, and minority staffers Pam Whitney and Alan Lee. I look forward to continuing our work to pass this bill on the House floor, and I'm proud that we're able to put our names on a bipartisan bill for the sake of our nation's space program, national pride, and our national security. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Palazzo. Let me make an offer to the members, and it is this. Both the ranking member and I are willing to put into the record our statements on the manager's amendment. I know there are two members, Ms. Esty, Mr. Kennedy, and perhaps others who have amendments that they were going to perhaps offer and withdraw. Let me say that the prospects of those being included on the House floor are exceedingly great if they don't offer those amendments now. And I happen to agree with the substance of both, by the way, and think they're good amendments and good improvements to the bill. But I'd also like to finish up so we don't have to come back after the next series of votes. Ms. Esty, is that agreeable with you and Mr. Kennedy? Okay. Thank you both in that regard. In that case, there are no further amendments and a reporting quorum being present. The question, with no further discussion on the amendment, the question is on agreeing to the amendment offered by Ms. Edwards and Mr. Palazzo. All in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it and the amendment is agreed to. Since there are no further amendments and reporting quorum being present, the question is on the bill. H.R. 4412 is amended. Those in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the bill, as amended, is ordered reported favorably. Before I conclude with some boilerplate language, let me thank all members for being here and for all being a part of a very successful markup and helping us advance a very, very important bill. Without objection, the motion is to reconsider is laid on the table, and I move that the bill H.R. 4412 is amended, be favorably reported to the House. The staff be authorized to make any necessary technical conforming changes, and without objection, so ordered. Without any further business, we stand adjourned, and again, thanks to all the members who are here today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eddie Bernice. For producing a bipartisan bill. The manager's amendment increases the use of the International Space Station for science research, encourages commercial use of space, protects us from the effects of solar flares, helps remove orbital debris, and supports the development of a new space telescope that will detect Earth-sized planets. The American people largely support space exploration and NASA. This support is reflected in Congress as well, on both sides of the Capitol and on both sides of the aisle. Lastly, we are at this point thanks to the persistence over many days of our very able staff members. On the Republican side, they include Tom Hammond, Allison Rose Sonneson, Jared Stout, and Gabriela Raman. And on the Democratic side, Pam Whitney and Alan Lee. This was obviously a team. Space exploration captures the imagination of people around the world and encourages future generations to dream big, work hard, and shoot for the stars. NASA has accomplished some of the most awe-inspiring and technologically advanced space initiatives in the history of humankind. Throughout its history, our space program has set goals that required vision and offered challenges that have led to innovation and the development of new technologies. New technologies give us new discoveries about the universe and hope that we can find solutions to problems here on Earth. Space exploration is an investment in our nation's future, often the distant future. And many technologies that Americans use on a daily basis were born out of NASA research. These include heart rate monitors, athletic shoes, air and water purifiers, cordless tools, and laptop computers. They improve Americans' quality of life and save lives. Today's bill ensures that NASA will continue to innovate and inspire. The scientists, engineers, and astronauts who find creative and new solutions to the challenges of exploring the universe serve as role models for our students. They motivate young people to study science, math, engineering, and computer science. Even if not all of these students become astronauts, the skills and knowledge they learn can be applied to make technological breakthroughs in other fields. These accomplishments stimulate our economy and keep the United States globally competitive. There is strong bipartisan support for NASA's unique role, and the manager's amendment offered today reflects this. Mr. Palazzo and Ms. Edwards deserve much credit and effort and is very much appreciated by members of the committee. I encourage members to vote for the manager's amendment when we get to it and to support the final bill. And then it's on to the House floor. That concludes my opening statement, and I'll recognize the ranking member, Ms. Johnson, the gentlewoman from Texas, for hers.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I will try to be relatively brief in my opening remarks so that we can quickly move to the consideration of the manager's amendment, at which time I will have a few additional comments. I've made no secret of the fact that I consider NASA to be a key element of our nation's research and development enterprise. NASA drives technological innovation and scientific advancement. It is also a very positive symbol throughout the world of American ingenuity.
The Committee on Science, Space, and Technology will come to order. Without objection, the Chair is authorized to declare recesses of the committee at any time. Pursuant to Committee Rule 2F and House Rule 11-2H4, roll call votes may be postponed. Today we meet to consider H.R. 4412, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration Authorization Act of 2014. I'll recognize myself and the ranking member for opening statements. Let me thank the members who are here, and we expect more momentarily, to be here for today's markup of H.R. 4412, the NASA Authorization Act of 2014. There is a reason why the National Air and Space Museum is the most visited museum in America.